2 weeks ago in Mexico City, the Formula One World Championship was given a high-voltage shock of excitement involving present and former teammates. Late in the race, Ferrari's Nigel Mansell ran down three-time world champion and former Williams teammate Nelson Piquet for second place. Then Alain Prost, rocketing through the field from 13th starting position, overtook his present teammate Mansell. On blistered tires, he then passed his former teammate Ayrton Senna, completing his improbable comeback to take the lead. Moments later, Mansell too passed Senna, but skated off the racetrack, while Senna's overtaxed rear tire exploded, dropping the series leader out of the points. Mansell rejoined the race, but fell into a wheel-banging duel for second, with another former teammate, Gerhard Berger, losing the position. With 2 laps to go, Mansell grabbed the spot back with an outside pass where angels fear to go. For Prost, it was career victory number 41, while Mansell held off Berger for a Ferrari sweep. Today, they'll do it all again, half a world away. Le Castellet, just 6 miles from the blue Mediterranean and a European crossroads for more than 2,000 years, today welcomes the world to the 40th running of the Grand Prix of France. Hello again, everyone. I'm Bob Varsha. You know, it'd be tough to get enough Frenchmen together to start a decent argument today, unless, of course, you have a television set, which would bring you full-day coverage of the Tour de France, the men's singles final at Wimbledon, and tonight's World Cup soccer final, in addition, of course, to the Formula One Grand Prix of France. And this should be a great race, because for the first time going in, Team McLaren appears to have met its match in Ferrari. With more on that, we turn to our old colleague David Hobbs. David, Ferrari is really looking good here.
Absolutely, Bob. Coming off a superb 1-2 just 2 weeks ago in Mexico, Nigel Mansell has his first pole in 2 years. October '87 was the last time he sat on the pole, and he's in the Ferrari. And next to him is his shootout partner from just 2 weeks ago, Gerhard Berger. In third spot is Ayrton Senna. Only the second time he's not been on the front row, also in 2 years, and right alongside him is Alain Prost in the other Ferrari. Behind them, Alessandro Nannini. Nigel Mansell's particularly worried about turn 1 here, a slow, narrow corner at the end of a fast starting straight, and he wants to avoid last year's carambolage, where Mauricio Gugelmin tried to win the race on the first corner of the first lap. This is also the 20th anniversary of racing here at Paul Ricard, and one of the guys who was here in that first year is our man, John Bisignano, down in the pits.
Thank you very much, David. 20 years ago, I was a brave Formula 3 driver at the initial event for Circuit Paul Ricard. It was state-of-the-art then, and is still considered one of the finest tracks on the Grand Prix Championship Tour. They've resurfaced the entire road here, and that's caused problems for both drivers and team managers. They're trying to find grip. The fastest qualifying times actually came on Friday, and as more rubber and oil goes down on this new surface, at the later stages of this event, you're going to see the cars slipping and sliding. To add to that confusion, there's every type of tire compound being used up and down this pit lane, trying to get that grip into the cars. Everyone is planning pit stops, so that makes up for one thing: exciting racing both on the track and in the pit lane for the French Grand Prix from Circuit Paul Ricard.
Thanks, John. Most people arrive at the Paul Ricard circuit by car or perhaps airplane. But for three-time world champion Nelson Piquet, there's only one way to travel: by helicopter, off the deck of your 125-foot yacht, the Pilar Rossi. ESPN Speed World coverage of the Grand Prix of France is brought to you by Acura Automobiles. Experience precision-crafted performance. Up in the green light at the Grand Prix of France after this. Castellet, France, where we have a good crowd on hand, despite the fact that this is one of the busiest days of the French sport year. We'll give you a look at the points coming into this 7th round of the Formula One World Championship. Your leader is Ayrton Senna over Alain Prost, who is tied with Gerhard Berger for second. Jean Alesi, Nigel Mansell, and Nelson Piquet are tied for third. Terry Boutsen, Riccardo Patrese, Sandro Nannini, and Alex Caffey follow. McLaren leads the constructors' points over Ferrari, Benetton, and Williams. Now let's take a look at the way they'll line up for today's race. On the pole for the first time since Japan of 1987, the Ferrari of Englishman Nigel Mansell, 2 seconds under the qualifying record here. Next to him is Nemesis from 2 weeks ago in Mexico, Austrian Gerhard Berger in the McLaren Honda. On row 2, Ayrton Senna, the first time he's been shut out of back-to-back poles since this race a year ago, and he's never won here. Next to him, Alain Prost of France in the 12-cylinder Ferrari, looking for his 3rd straight win. On row 3, Sandro Nannini, who turned 31 Saturday in the Benetton with V8 Ford power. Next to him, Riccardo Patrese of Italy in the 10-cylinder Williams-Renault carrying an in-car camera. On row 4, Ivan Capelli of Italy in an extraordinary turnabout for the Leighton House with English Judd B. V8 power. Next to him, Terry Boutsen of Belgium, who turns 33 next Friday. He's in the Williams Renault. On row 5, Nelson Piquet of Brazil in the Benetton V8 Ford, not up front where he'd like to be. Next to him, Maurizio Gugelmin, starting in the same 10th spot where his Leighton House caused that big first turn crash a year ago. Row 6, young French sensation Eric Bernard in the LaRousse with Lamborghini 12-cylinder power, next to Frenchman Philippe Ayot in the Ligier with the Ford Cosworth V8. Row 7, Jean Alesi of France in the Tyrrell Ford, the Pirelli tired cars not doing well here. Next to him, young Japanese Aguri Suzuki in the 12-cylinder LaRousse Lamborghini carrying an in-car camera. Row 8 will be Satoru Nakajima of Japan in the Tyrrell Ford with Pirelli tires, next to Derek Warwick of Great Britain in the yellow Lotus Lamborghini. Behind Warwick on row 9 will be Martin Donnelly, his fellow Englishman. Those two have been joined to the hip at qualifying all year long. Next to him, Michele Alboreto of Italy in the Arrows Ford. On row 10 will be Nicola Larini of Italy in the Ligier with Ford V8 power, next to Stefano Modena of Italy in the Brabham with the English Judd engine. On row 11, Andrea De Cesaris of Italy in the Dallara, next to fellow Italian Alex Caffi in the Arrows Ford. On row 12, Pierluigi Martini of Italy in the Minardi, way in back of where we're used to seeing him these days. Next to him, fellow Italian Emanuele Pirro in the Dallara. On the final row, 13, David Brabham of Australia makes another start in the Brabham with Judd power, next to Yannick Dalmes of France, who has finally qualified the AGS with the Ford. Those who missed the cut, Paolo Barilla of Italy in the Minardi and his fellow Italian Gabriele Tarquini in the AGS, Gregor Foytek of Switzerland, and J.J. Leto in the two Onyx Fords. Olivier Griard of France missed out in the Osella, Roberto Moreno of Brazil in the Eurobrune, his teammate Claudio Langes of Italy, Bertrand Gachot, that is, of Belgium in the Coloni. They may lose their engines after the British Grand Prix next week, and Bruno Giacomelli failed to make a single lap in the life car. We'll be back to take a closer look at this 2.369-mile racetrack and get ready for the green light in round 7 of the 1990 Formula One World Championship, the Grand Prix of France. Stay with us. We're back at the Circuit Paul Ricard in Le Castellet, France. Bob Barsha, David Hobbs, and John Bizignano with you. We are just moments away from the order to start the cars on their performance, on their reconnaissance lap, as it's known. They will make one complete lap, and then we will once again, as we did in Mexico, allow you to call the start of the race. 26 cars are on the way, and here is the weather condition they will face today. 80 degrees, but getting rapidly hotter. The wind is from the southwest at about 10 miles an hour, and it gets stronger as the day goes on. It's known as the Mistral, and it will be blowing in the faces of the drivers as they head up this long, high-speed back straightaway named for that wind. This is the Mistral straightaway. Only a 30% level of humidity, no chance of rain throughout the day. It has been very, very warm here at Paul Ricard all weekend. David, how about a little overall analysis of this track?
Well, there you see it. It's basically 10 turns, although those bottom corners you see in the bottom right are very, very complicated. Long, long, long right-hander. Very much emphasis on right-hand turns here, which puts a lot of effort on that left front. Only about 15 or 16 gear shifts per lap, depending on your car setup. Very little, if no, elevation change, and one of the smoothest tracks in Formula One racing. It's all just been totally resurfaced.
Now you got to look there at some of the in-car cameras. We actually have 4 cars carrying a total of 5 cameras. You're on board there with Terry Boutsen. He and Riccardo Patrese are both carrying forward-looking cameras, and there are other cameras on the LaRousse machines. A quick word now from John Bizignano.
Well, Bob, all the mechanics are coming off the grid, and the grid was in surprisingly good shape. Nigel Mansell, they were working on his motor and looked very concerned, but when he went off the grid, he sounded perfectly fine. The Benetton, they were adjusting the sway bars on both cars, and on Derek Warwick's Lotus, they were adjusting the back sway bar, trying to get some grip down these long straightaways, accelerating out of this last corner. This is probably the most quiet you're going to see this pit lane all the rest of the day, and everyone down here is very nervous. We got to be careful. There's going to be a lot of action.
Thank you, John. I'm a little nervous myself. There's a look at the crowd. It is about capacity, and that's a bit of a surprise on this busy day in sports.
Past most of them coming in this morning. I'm surprised that a lot of people didn't stay home for the World Cup and other sporting. There's Jean-Marie Balestre, the top gun in all of auto racing.
Jean-Marie Balestre,
the man on the right.
The abrasive Frenchman who has run the FISA, International Governing Body of Worldwide Motorsport. On the left is Nigel Mansell. On the right, Gerhard Berger. They had such a tremendous race a week ago in Mexico. The rest of the cars forming up behind them.
Nigel expressed doubts last night about this turn 1. I'm sure he's had a word with Gerhard Berger about trying to get them both through that very, very vital first corner.
He does not have the ideal line. He's going to have to come across the track from left to right. Have fun calling the first lap of the 40th French Grand Prix. We're going to lay out. If there's an incident, we'll be back. Turn up the volume and enjoy. To complete lap 1. Have you ever seen a start like that? 4 and 5 wide. Gerhard Berger pulls out a quick 6-length lead over Nigel Mansell. Here comes Ayrton Senna taking a look out the outside. Behind him, one of the Benettons, I believe that's Nannini, lit him up. Followed by Patrese, Alain Prost, Terry Boutsen, and Nelson Piquet.
Well, in all that excitement, I missed where Berger got by him because Nigel Mansell was definitely leading through the first 2 turns, and possibly he overtook him on this long back straight. We were darting from car to car and in-car cameras, and we missed that pass, and there's Senna going around Nigel Mansell to go up to the end of this straight.
Now this is a surprise, flat out in 6th gear right here. Mansell and Prost were the 2 quickest cars, in fact in the opposite order. Prost over Mansell in the morning warm-up in race trim with full tanks. But right now Nigel Mansell is not the equal of the McLarens. There is Ayrton Senna.
Well, today is going to be a tyre game. It really is. And both the McLarens ran their tyres off their cars in Mexico. And Alain Prost, of course, certainly did not. Nigel did to a certain extent. So I think today is going to be a really, they're going to play cat and mouse around here with each other's tyres. And these 2 McLaren boys want to be very careful that they don't run their tyres off. Hot today. There we are with Thierry Boutsen going down past the pit straight. There's Mansell under pressure from Nannini in the Benetton Ford. The V8 engine car is going extremely well here with these 2 very long straights.
There is Nigel Mansell, perhaps playing it coy, waiting for the fuel load to lessen, for his Ferrari to really come on form. Accelerating to up to 199 miles an hour on the Mistral straight with the wind in their face.
And maintaining 199 through this sharp sweeper here. None of these guys are lifting off. Maybe in traffic they lift a little bit, but when they're on their own, they manage to take that long right-hander absolutely flat out. Here you see the Beauzère, which is this long, long right-hander, and these cars are developing 4.9 lateral Gs through that corner. Almost blackout.
Nigel Mansell has a tremendous scrape on his left elbow as a result of the battering he took in Mexico due to those G-forces, no doubt. He has got Sandro Nannini right behind. Ahead are the 2 McLarens. It is Berger, Mansell, Senna, Nannini, Patrese. Make that Berger, Senna, Mansell, Nannini, Patrese, Prost, Boutsen, Piquet, Alesi, and Capelli, the top 10. Good run for Capelli. They've had such a bad season. David, let's take the course on a full lap.
Well, we come into turn 1, which is the 2nd gear. Then, as you can see, the road just has a little chink left. They slip it up to 3rd for this 2nd sharp right-hander, leading onto the Mistral straight. Whereas you've already said they reach speeds of about 199, 200 miles an hour, and sweep around this long, long right-hander at the end, maintaining that speed close to 200 miles an hour. Down to 4th for the double right hand, which is called Beauzère. This one here, they go down to 4th for that. Maintain 4th gear all the way through there. Hang on, hang on, hang on, round the corner. And then we come to the chicane, which doesn't show up very well on this map, which is 3rd gear, which is an extra bit of right, and then a left sweep here. Then a long left, which they want to get right, because on the exit, they're going to lead into this long right-hander again, back up to 5th gear around here. Very important bit of road. And then the final 2 corners, the left-hander, and then this final 2nd gear right-hander back onto the pit straight.
Now they come off that right-hander at about 50 miles an hour. In the space of about 100 meters to the start-finish line right there, they reach 140 miles an hour.
These cars, of course, only weigh 1,100 pounds, so they accelerate somewhat on the swift side. There's no doubt about that. Ayrton Senna looks like he's winding in his teammate Berger.
Keep in mind, Senna has dominated every race thus far this year. Even at Imola, when he went out on the 2nd lap, he was running up front. It's only been mechanical difficulties and some poor choice in his McLaren pit that has kept Ayrton Senna from winning virtually all the races this year. But I guess that's what racing is all about. You make mistakes and things break.
It's significant that the straightaway speed, when they got here on Friday morning, they were doing 320 kilometers down that back straight, 200 miles an hour. And this morning in warm-up, they had slowed up to about 307, whereas their lap speeds, of course, have remained about the same or a little bit better. And, of course, that is a function of how much wing they've piled on these cars over the weekend to maintain lap speed at the expense of straightaway speed.
You see the McLarens pulling out a bit of a lead over Nigel Mansell in the extraordinary performance of the Benetton for Sandro Nannini. Berger, Senna, Mansell, Nannini, Petrani, and Prost. We'll be right back. Back in Le Castellet, France, on a sizzling hot Sunday afternoon in July. Welcome back to the Grand Prix of France. Gerhard Berger of Austria, with 6 laps complete, leads his teammate Ayrton Senna by 1.014 seconds. Nigel Mansell and Sandro Nannini in close attendance, then a 2-second gap back to Riccardo Patrese, Alain Prost, Thierry Boutsen, Nelson Piquet, Jean Alesi, and Ivan Capelli filling out the top 10. There you see Nigel Mansell pulling up once again on the McLaren. Just as quickly, Senna pulls out a lead once again. Now let's go to our onboard cameras, that is. You're riding now with Riccardo Patrese. Coming down to that 2nd gear right-hander that leads onto the pit straight. Slow corner, but as you say, they accelerate from 60 to 160 by the time they cross that start-finish line. Down the long straight, under the pedestrian bridge, down to turn 1, hard on the brakes, down to 2nd, a bit of brake up there on the in-car camera. Switched from the Williams of Riccardo Patrese to the Lamborghini LaRousse car of Eric Bernard of France. Listen to the difference in the engine sound. 10 cylinders versus 12. Now Eric Bernard is lifting just slightly. You listen. A little bubble there. I can see why he lifted. Down to 4th, misses the apex a bit there, getting out of the throttle quite a lot there. The car's obviously using up more road than he wants to. Down to 3rd for the chicane. Left, now he's got to make this left-hander count, doesn't want to get too wide if he can help it, because this long right-hander here, he'll be up to 5th gear length this section. Even though the road constantly moves right, it's very fast. Down to 4th for this left-hander, whoops, using low road there too. And then down to 2nd for this last right-hander onto the pit straight. Missed the apex there rather. Oops. Obviously using quite a bit of road. Somebody going in the pits there in front of him on his camera. Beautiful sound. And Thierry Boutsen is pitting the Williams. This is totally unexpected, the Williams, and he's coming in very slowly. That's not a good sign. Next Friday, he turns 32 years old, and he and wife Patricia expecting their first child next week. Here's John.
Thierry Boutsen has arrived in the Williams stopping area, and as you said, he came in very slowly. The engine was not running. They are pushing him forward and right into the garage. There's a great amount of fluid coming out of the bottom of the car. I cannot tell you exactly. Yes, it is engine oil. Or, sorry, it's not engine oil. It's absolutely coolant. A lot of cooling fluid coming out of the right radiator, I believe. We'll get an exact report of why Thierry Boutsen is out of the French Grand Prix.
You got to look there at a French television replay of Emanuele Pirro spinning the Dallara off the racetrack. Tough break for Thierry Boutsen. I said 32. He turns 33 next Friday. The old gray beard.
I was going to say,
meanwhile, you're back up with the leader. This is Gerhard Berger of Austria, still running single file and very close together.
The cars have really closed up now. There's only 0.8 of a second back to to Senna, and then Mansell and Nannini are less than half a second behind them.
Now, we pointed out that stops are expected, so these guys know that if everybody's going to stop, then they can drive hard. They can use up those tires. They need to get to lap 20, perhaps 20 to 30 laps in before they can change tires. So they are really getting after it now, knowing they're going to change either way.
There is a rumor that the Ferraris may, in fact, pit twice, as much as twice, have fresh tires for as much of this race as possible.
And it'll certainly cost them perhaps as much as 30 seconds to slow down, make a quick Formula One pit stop using 14 mechanics and getting back up to speed again. Another comment from John Bizignano.
The reason the reason the Ferraris are going to pit twice is because they're on the softest rubber possible that Goodyear could give them. They went out on the C tires. They figured that they may have to stop twice around, first stop around lap 20 or lap 30, and then the second stop around lap 45. We'll have to see if the strategy works, that they can stay ahead even with 2 pit stops.
And from John's microphone, you got a good idea of the absolute bedlam that goes on in a Formula One pit lane. The sound is just indescribable.
Ferrari is looking really good. Patrese there under extreme pressure from Alain Prost. I'm sure, in fact, that once Prost gets around Patrese, he will pull away a little bit. Prost, of course, as we saw in Mexico, is the absolute consummate racer. He just knows how to get a car across that finishing line first. An amazing record of wins. That was John Alesi, I think, the first of the Pirelli shod tire cars. And he, at the moment, is down in 8th spot. The V8s here, generally speaking, are not going to get a look in with these very long straights. Of course, Nannini and Piquet have the very, very special development engines from Ford itself. And so they have a slightly different engine to all the Cosworth engine cars out here. And there's Nelson Piquet himself, the man who spent the weekend on his boat. Saw him going home yesterday afternoon on some huge motorbike. Looked extremely unsafe to me, but there it was. He seemed to be enjoying himself on the lovely twisty road down to Bandol.
Riccardo Patrese runs in 5th position. I like the sound of that engine so much. Let's take a lap with him. Oh, that's too bad. We're having problems with that in-car. French television network SFP is providing our pictures today. There goes Sandro Nannini, having an extraordinary performance. Make that the French network TF1. They must be borrowing SFP's trucks, because that's all I've been reading all weekend. Down they come on the backstretch, the intermediate timing point where these cars have been reaching close to 200 miles an hour. Your top 10, Berger, Senna, Mansell, Nannini, Patrese, Prost, Piquet, Alesi, Capelli, and Bernard. The next 10, Maurizio Gugelmin, Aguri Suzuki, Philippe Ayot, Derek Warwick, Satoru Nakajima, Martin Donnelly, Michele Alboreto, Alex Caffrey, Andre de Gezeris, and Stefano Modena. These are the top 4. Running very close together, 5th and 6th in close attendance. We'll be back to the Grand Prix of France in beautiful Le Castellet after this.
Certainly would add a different atmosphere to the place. I think, you know, Formula One probably could do with a good woman driver, you know, obviously bring a lot more PR and prestige to the Formula. And certainly, you know, she would probably give some of the guys run for the money here.
For a woman to drive a Formula One car at the level that we are driving now, with all the G-force we have and the car that are going quicker and quicker, is not easy, because just from the physical point of view they are not strong enough.
I think some women and some quality like to be a little smooth for different problems, maybe have some better feeling to the men, but I think it's very hard for the women to ride in a Formula One.
I don't know why no lady is here, but I think it's very simple. If you go play tennis, you have 2 different categories. You have ladies and boys, and physically a lady cannot beat a boy in tennis or in football or whatever. And I think the same is here. I think so long you don't have a own category for ladies, a lady will be not competitive enough to drive a Formula One car.
Well, I wouldn't mind, as long as they're slower than I am, then it's alright.
If If you'd like to ask a question of a Formula One driver, send your question to Ask the Driver, P.O. Box 309, Crestwood, Kentucky 40014. And the opinions expressed by the drivers do not necessarily reflect those of ESPN. Back at Le Castellet, Bob Varsha, David Hobbs, and John Bizignano with you. You're watching the battle for 5th place. Riccardo Patrese and Alain Prost.
But of course, it is true to say that these cars do demand tremendous physical strength and endurance, and obviously ladies, women, do have tremendous powers of endurance, but sheer physical strength, I think that most women would find their work pretty well cut out in a Formula One car today.
We should point out that there have been 2 women in Formula One, Desiree Wilson of South Africa and Lella Lombardi of Italy. Both started Formula One cars in the past. Not for very long, unfortunately. Let's get an update now from John.
Bob, Desiree Wilson's actually living in Denver, Colorado now, organizing the Grand Prix of Denver. The Williams, of course, are down to 1 car. Terry Boots said, please excuse me for not being on camera with you, but my engine absolutely exploded. It was both oil and water coming out of that engine. It went in a very big way. It went right in the middle of the kink on the back straightaway. David Hobbs, I've got to ask you, with almost 5 G-forces going through that kink, what's it like when you lose directional control and have no motor?
It's pretty horrible, and it's one of those things that you certainly hope's not going to happen to you, and you hope it's not going to happen to the guy right in front of you, too, as he spreads all that fluid on the track. But you're right, John. Losing power in a situation like this, where the car is very heavily loaded, is always a tricky business. And you only got to ask some of those guys who race at Darlington, Daytona, and Indianapolis the same sort of question, of course.
That was the second big problem for Terry Boots, and he had a big spin when he lost a tire on the Mistral backstretch here at Le Castellet earlier in practice on Friday. Still having problem with that onboard camera in Riccardo Patrese's car. He is under heavy pressure from Alain Prost, who has won the last 2 French Grands Prix here.
And in fact, catching them up now is Nelson Piquet, who is only 1.3 seconds behind. There you got a great view.
Out the back of Eric Bernard's Lola.
And that, in fact, is that behind him? Is that the other one?
No, that's Mauricio Gugelmin coming up behind in the Leighton house. This is the battle for 10th place. Watch the rear suspension work. Shadings of tire, the shadings of color on the tire, which shows the way the tire is wearing. Over the curb hard.
Poor old Mauricio, I'm sure, is being held up by Eric Bernard. Eric Bernard's lap times are just a little bit slower than most of the people around him, including Gugelmin. And Gugelmin, of course, is finding it difficult with the Judd-powered V8 engine to get past Eric Bernard as we go down these long straights, but I know that if he could get round him, he would pull away.
That's the V12 Lamborghini engine supported by the Chrysler Corporation. You're on the backstretch once again, picking up that battle between Patrese and Prost for 5th. Berger is your leader. He has pulled out 9/10 of a second over his McLaren teammate Ayrton Senna. 6/10 of a second back is Nigel Mansell in the leading Ferrari. Then Sandro Nannini, 7/10 of a second behind Mansell. So it stays very close. There's a 2-second gap to this battle between Patrese and Prost. Remember, a year ago, Patrese's Williams broke on the warm-up lap. He would not have started the race, but for the big crash at the first corner started by Gugelmin. Patrese got back to the pits, got in his warm-up car, his backup car, I should say, wound up finishing 3rd in the race. Nigel Mansell's car was wrecked in that crash. He took Gerhard Berger's and wound up finishing 2nd. Great drive.
Patrese at Prost, and then right behind Prost, you can now see the green Benetton of Nelson Piquet, who's storming back here.
Looked like Sandro Nannini had a notion of going up the inside of Nigel Mansell's red Ferrari #2, but he couldn't get it done under acceleration.
Nannini was 31 years old yesterday. In fact, he was born in 1959, the same year that yours truly started racing. So, fairly horrific statistic, one way or another.
Ferrari drifting across the racetrack to protect the line and snapping back in front of...
Strange Nannini. To say that Nannini's car seems to be... Yes, Alain Prost there definitely got away from him. The car got away from him, and Nannini tried to capitalize, but couldn't quite pull it off.
Nigel Mansell got a little wide. Nannini went underneath.
Did I say Prost?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Hey, I do it all the time.
Nigel Mansell.
There are the leading McLarens. Berger followed by Senna. Here comes Mansell with Nannini hot on his trail.
It's amazing how that V8 has come to life here, so holding on to these V12s. And starting next week, the Benetton cars have a Series 4 engine, which is going to give them even more power than they've got here. So I'm sure they'll be looking forward to that.
And it's been announced here that the Ford engines will be going into a brand new Formula One team next year, run by Formula 3000 team owner Eddie Jordan in Great Britain. They will not be the same specification as those in the Benettons, but they will be the new generation Ford power plants, not the DFR Cosworths. Watch these two guys go. 359 Grand Prix starts between the all-time leader, Riccardo Patrese, and the all-time leader in wins, Alain Prost. It is Berger, Senna, Mansell, Nannini, Patrese, Prost, Piquet, Alesi, and Capelli. And there are Alesi and Capelli taking each other off the racetrack nearly. They remain in the hunt. We'll take a quick time out and return to the battle at the 40th Grand Prix of France here on ESPN. Stay with us. It's a McLaren 1-2 with 20 laps complete of 80 scheduled at the 40th Grand Prix of France. But coming up later today at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, it's the Budweiser Cleveland Grand Prix for the kart Indy cars. Rick Mears is on the pole on that blindingly quick road course at the Burke Lakefront Airport. And Rick proved at the end of last year at Laguna Seca he can win on a road circuit. Coming your way here on ESPN, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 11 a.m. Pacific, live. Here at the French Grand Prix, Gerhard Berger leads with now 21 laps complete. You're watching the battle for 5th position between Riccardo Patrese and Alain Prost.
And we've lost Nelson Piquet somewhere. He was looking pretty strong. He was catching these two up, Patrese and Prost, and suddenly Nelson Piquet is gone. And we've now got a 3-second gap back to Jean Alesi, who we saw struggling mightily with Ivan Capelli. Obviously, Alesi not used to Capelli being up there jousting with him. Capelli, in fact, not even making a couple of races this year, including, of course, the last one.
Top 4 cars in the middle of your screen. Berger, Senna, Mansell, Nannini, nose to tail here. 22 laps now done. And coming up behind the battle for 5th, Patrese, 36 years old. He made his Formula One start at Monaco in 1977 when Ayrton Senna was racing karts in Brazil, and Alain Prost was in Formula 3.
It's not often you see that this close a spread 22 laps into a Formula One race. That's quarter distance gone by. So, from what John says and from what we heard earlier about 2 pit stops for these Ferraris possible, they could be starting to think about making a pit stop now, but it seems hard to believe that anybody's going to stop in the white heat of this battle.
I've got to believe if they do stop. Ooh, Nigel, that's Alain Prost getting very wide. We already saw Nigel Mansell do that at the end of the front straightaway. Those tires may be going away very quickly on the Ferraris. I would think their hand would be forced, David. They've got to go to a hard tire and try to make it a one-stop race. They can't afford to drop out of this, as you say. Alain Prost with 41 victories, including 2 straight here in his home Grand Prix in France. Coming off a victory 2 weeks ago in Mexico, driving from 13th on the grid. A pit stop coming up.
That's Alesi, I think.
I believe it is. Jean Alesi, as the French call him, from just up the road from Paul Ricard in Avignon, France. John Visignano is there.
Jean Alesi brings his shark-nosed Tyrrell into the pits. They're doing a lot of work on his visor. 4 Pirellis on. They're having a little trouble with the left rear. They're having a lot of trouble with the left rear. This is the first Pirelli car in. He started on the softer Pirellis. Benetton is set up. We'll bring it to you the moment that they get in. Piquet did come into the pits. That's why he disappeared for a second. He is out there on his second set of the very soft seas.
And Alain Prost is all over Riccardo Patrese. Now in the Lotus pit, Martin Donnelly. The young Irishman brings in the yellow Lotus Lamborghini.
Martin Donnelly was running back in 17th spot. Just 3 places behind his teammate, Derek Warwick.
Like Alesi, Donnelly made his first Formula One start in this race 1 year ago. Great battle for 5th place.
Prost catching up on the brakes there. Prost seems to be having a good time with his braking lately. Last week or 2 weeks ago in Mexico, he passed pretty well everybody under braking one way or another. So they've got those Ferrari brakes operating really well. And of course, he in turn is using them extremely well.
Through the heat haze on the Mistral. Oh, Alex Caffey and the Footwork Arrows is done. They cannot push start that car under the 1990 Formula One rules.
Prost nosing in and out of Patrese down this long Mistral back straight. Bit of a headwind today, which will be keeping their speed down just a little bit as they turn into the Seine corner.
Right, down to about 195.
Yeah, right.
Prost looking every way to get around. Apparently, the very evenly matched Williams. Alain Prost, a national hero here in France.
If you're wondering why we're seeing so much of this race for 5th and 6th position, it is, of course, because the one who's running in 6th is your actual Al Prost Français.
You disregard his 41 victories, and the last Frenchman to win a Formula One race was René Arnoux back in 1983.
Look at how Capelli, how Alesi in the car on Pirelli's pulled in, and Capelli has wound this leading group in. These marches have made, the Leighton House cars have made a lot of changes to the chassis and the aerodynamics in particular, and they're really coming to life. I mean, he has eaten these guys alive, and I think the same would happen to Gugelmin if he could just get around Eric Bernard.
Yvon Capelli, boy, what a breath of fresh air. These guys have had nothing but bad luck last year and this. They didn't even qualify for some of the first rounds of the 1990 season, but now they're doing very well. The team lost its designer, or perhaps fired its designer, Adrian Newey, and hired a fellow named Chris Murphy from the Lola team. They have stiffened up the tub of that car, and it is really running well. Capelli has now set fast lap. He is down in the qualifying range at 1 minute 9.8 seconds.
Now, of course, catching guys like Prost and Patrese up is one thing. Getting past them is, of course, a totally different thing.
Keep in mind, Yvon Capelli is in a V8 powered car, and he's running down the V10 and V12 powered cars.
Not just any old V8 either, of course. It's the Judd, which is a very fine engine, has great ties to Jack Brabham, but of course is not generally reckoned to be quite as good as the Cosworth Ford, but certainly going well here.
Nigel Mansell under attack. Sandro Nannini nearly touches wheels, and you don't do that in open-wheel cars.
Well, I think Nigel just suddenly slowed up. I wonder if he's got a problem with his gearbox. That would seem to be the most logical thing.
Watch from the left of your screen. Nannini looks to the outside and then chops across behind Mansell's Ferrari.
Who suddenly slows up there, and he does, in fact, just tag him with that left front wheel.
Boy, if they touch at speed, those cars hop high into the air. The Lola is in and out. This is Eric Bernard of France. Bernard trained on this racetrack, Paul Ricard, at the Elf Winfield School. One of its finest graduates, as is Alain Prost. Coming up quickly at the back of your picture. There he is, sandwiched between the Williams and the onrushing Yvon Capelli in the Leighton House car.
And Gugelmin, having got around Bernard, has made big strides on his teammate. He's 11 seconds behind Capelli. So both those Leighton House cars now lying in 7th and 8th spot, and one of the Ferraris pulled in.
One of the Ferraris is in. Prost. This is Alain Prost.
We're ready.
Coming at you, John.
Ready, and Alain Prost almost takes off my left foot. He comes into the stopping area. RPM screaming away. He must be revving this car up to 12 runs. The Ninja Turtles of Ferrari get this car out of here in about 9 seconds. Fantastic job. The boys in Ferrari yellow, they're setting up for the teammate, Nigel Mansell. He'll be here momentarily, and we'll bring it to you just as calmly as we did that one.
John, here comes Ayrton Senna underneath his teammate Gerhard Berger, who takes a quick look to his right and allows the Brazilian to take the lead. So it is now Senna, Berger, Mansell, Nannini, and now Mansell is attacking Berger. There may be something wrong with the number 28 McLaren.
Berger, of course, was the first guy to run his tires up in Mexico, and it could be that his tires have just about seen their best.
John, if you can find out what kind of tires they put on Prost's Ferrari, I'd like to know.
Absolutely, we'll get you that information. He started out on the C's as we reported before, and we'll find out what he went back on. But with the lesser fuel load, I would think that they would continue with the C's.
Benetton coming in. One of the Benettons, Nannini, I believe, is coming in.
And Berger.
And Berger as well. Look out, folks. Nannini locks him up and almost misses his pit. Here goes McLaren, one of the best crews in the business. A single lock nut holds the wheel on. Perfectly on the mark, and a problem for Berger. No, not a very good stop.
No, stop. Over 12 seconds, nearly 13 seconds.
Classy Formula One stop is about 7. And suddenly Ayrton Senna has lots of room behind him.
And Alan Prost had a brilliant stop there. Certainly not so good for Gerhard Berger. And with the even matching of these cars now, you just can't afford a pit stop like that.
Now, will Ayrton Senna come in? Recall that he did not pit with a leaking right rear tire at Mexico 2 weeks ago, and it cost him dearly. He finished 20th. Patrese and Capelli continue that battle for 5th place. It is Senna, Mansell, Berger, Nannini, Patrese.
David Brabham going to pits there.
Mansell moving in now on the leader, Senna. Behind him, Patrese trying to hold off Capelli. I put Nannini in that top 5. He is not in the top 5. He pitted. We'll wait for our electronic timing and scoring system to update the leaderboard as 28 laps complete of 80 scheduled. Onto the Mistral Straight. 200 miles an hour as the fuel load lightens. And from full to empty, it's about a 200 to 250 pound difference. And that is really a lot in a car that only weighs 1,100 to begin with.
Into that double right-hander, flames coming out of the exhaust on Nigel's car, and there's Patrese and Capelli. Capelli now really putting the pressure onto Patrese. A young and a not-so-young Italian, but a very experienced Italian whose car we're in now.
Now in his 14th season of Formula One racing, Riccardo Patrese, 199 starts. Next week in Britain, if all things go well, he will make his 200th Formula One start. That is unprecedented. Senna is in. Here comes Senna, John.
By Ayrton Senna, the man leading this French Grand Prix, comes whistling into his pit area, and the perfect people from McLaren go to work. A little bit of trouble with the left rear, a little bit more trouble, a lot of trouble with the left rear. They are having an awful time with that left rear. There's one big nut. The brakes are smoking. A lot of distortion down there in that particular area. My gosh, these left rear corner boys are ready to slice their throats down here.
Look like
very bad stop for Senna.
17 seconds plus. That may be the decisive moment, at least in the first half of this race. It looked like they had trouble with the left rear hub. It may have stripped. You saw the mechanic pick up a new one and shove it onto the hub.
Well, I don't know, but I expect there's going to be a lot of debating in the McLaren pit over the left rear crew. They seem to, both cars seem to have problems with that left rear tire. It could have just been purely coincidence, but I'm sure that there'll be a lot of investigating going on.
Stefano Modena coming through in the Brabham. They're going to have a new engine soon as well. Nigel Mansell is pitting. John, here he comes. Modena will take over a Yamaha engine in 1991 with the Brabham team. Let's get to the Ferrari pit.
Nigel Mansell following the colors of the Tricolore into his stopping area, clearing out the Benetton boys on his way. It looks quite smooth, not as fast as his teammate. A little problem on the left front of the car is down, and my gosh, look at that smoke going out of here. We talked to the Goodyear gentlemen, and they say that he did put C's back on all the way around. Ferrari says they are running on C compound, they're very soft, and the Williams are still out there on the B.
10-second stop for Nigel Mansell. Despite the problem, that's not too bad.
Well, of course, it's just given him 7 seconds over the rest of the field, or over his main competitor, Ayrton Senna. And tell you, with the way these cars are going today, 7 seconds is going to be jolly hard to get back out here on the racetrack.
Wow, well, after that kind of pit action, we'll take a quick time out to reshuffle our scoreboard. You're watching live the French Grand Prix. Stay right there.
Well, it's just Keke and Otwin Portlik. They used to be my managers before. Now it's only Keke, and we used to, well, we designed the helmet together. And of course, they are always thinking commercial things, you know. It has to be looking good, and you have to get the sponsors and everything on. And normally the Finns have some blue on the helmets, but I got black, and I really like it. I prefer it that way.
Of course, KK is KK Rosberg, the 1982 world champion.
And of course, absolutely amazingly enough, didn't qualify 2 weeks ago in Mexico, and the current leader is Yvon Capelli, and lying third is his teammate Maurizio Gugelmin.
Let's get down to the pits and John Bizignano.
Riccardo Patrese just made a horrible pit stop. Another 12, 14, maybe 17-second pit stop. A lot of trouble with the left front. They actually had to change the air gun to try and get that one big nut that holds these tires very securely, hopefully very securely, off. A very bad pit stop. A bad day for the Frank Williams team.
Your leader is Ivan Capelli, going out the bottom of your screen. He has lapped Andrea De Cesaris in the red car. There goes Michele Alboreto in the white machine, followed by the leader Capelli. There is De Cesaris. We're waiting for the second place car, which right now is listed as Mauricio Gugelmin. The Leighton House team, as you look at Riccardo Patrese there, the last race they scored points in was the first event of 1989 in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, when it was Gugelmin taking the third place behind Mansell and Prost. Right now they are running first and second. Aguri Suzuki and the Lola goes by now. Lola's right there, nose to tail. They are Bernard and Suzuki running 11th and 12th.
There is Riccardo Patrese, who's running in 10th.
Meanwhile, Alain Prost is tearing up the racetrack. He runs third behind Capelli and Gugelmin. 108.445 is his new race lap best. Behind Prost is Nannini, followed by Nigel Mansell, Nelson Piquet. Ayrton Senna, by virtue of that horrible pit stop, is now 7th, followed by his teammate Gerhard Berger in 8th. Philippe Ayot, Riccardo Patrese is 10th. We'll update the second 10 when we can. This is extraordinary, with 35 of 80 laps complete. The Leighton House cars, known as Marches, running first and second. There is Gerhard Berger.
Gerhard Berger also had a pretty horrible pit stop, and he's running in 8th. That's Nelson Piquet right in front of him, who was the first fast guy to stop, and is coming back up.
Now keep in mind, our leader has not pitted, so we expect a further shuffling, but this is a great day for Capelli and Gugelmin. They must be driving with crossed fingers and toes, hoping the cars will hold together. The new designer for that Leighton House team is a fellow named Chris Murphy, who, as I mentioned, came over from Lola. In addition to being a fine designer, he is also engaged to Cynthia Harvey, the famous ballerina from America.
Well, you just live and learn. Watch ESPN, and you just learn all sorts of stuff.
You're going to get me letters. Here comes Nelson Piquet, who's got that huge yacht down in the harbor. Looks like one of the Ligers heads for the pits, maybe Philippe Ayot. Here comes Michele Alboreto. Haven't seen much of him. And now our leader, Ivan Capelli.
Cameramen not looking exactly who to look for at the moment with Capelli leading this race. Such a surprise, but such a nice little guy. He really is one of the nicest Formula One drivers out there. Such an easy interview and so easy to get along with. And of course, they've just been struggling so badly the last 2 years. As you say, the last points they scored was the first race last year. And look at this now, first and second in this race. Of all places, here at Paul Ricard.
His best finish is a second at Portugal at 1988. Capelli was the original lead driver for that team when it was known as the March team. He was then joined by Gugelmin, and they just swept everything before them. They were sure winners at the end of the 1987 season.
There's Gugelmin, who's lying second, and that right behind him is Al Prost, who had a fantastic pit stop and is now running in third spot, and I'm sure will shortly annex the lead of this race because both Capelli and Gugelmin have yet to make their tyre stop.
Make that the 88 season, in which so much was expected from March, and then it all came apart last year.
Oh, Prost must be thinking, is that who I think it is in front of me? It can't be. He must be a lap down. Why doesn't he get out of the way and let me through?
Because he's going just as fast as you are right now, Alain. Capelli, lapping at 1 minute 9 seconds, has a 7.3 second gap over his teammate Gugelmin. Prost, less than a second behind. In fact, less than 3 car lengths behind, followed by Sandro Nannini and Nigel Mansell. Leighton House, Ferrari, Benetton, Ford, Ferrari.
Senna in an undistinguished, unusual 6th place for him is now 4.5 seconds behind Nigel Mansell, who is 3 seconds behind Nannini, who in turn is 3 seconds behind this battling duo here. Prost taking the long way round that long right-hander, but I think it takes less toll on his tyres by doing that very wide approach.
He's also got Andrea De Cesaris in front of him to think about.
And
you need to concentrate when passing Andrea.
That's an understatement. It's a very nice word, that, Bob. You need to concentrate. I must remember that.
Hey, he was once picked as a future world champion by designer Gerard Ducarouge.
And what's Gerard Ducarouge designing today?
He's designing for the Lola LaRousse team, I believe. Capelli takes the inside line onto Cesaris and the Dallara. Gugelmin, I beg your pardon. With Prost right behind, uneventful corner. You can see they shoot straight across what is essentially supposed to be a right-left-right combination. It's basically 2 corners and not 3. Onto the Mistral, Capelli, and right there is Prost.
All I can say is that Prost must be running an incredible amount of wing to try and help his tires to not eat Ivan Capelli's car up on that long straight. This is where he goes wide. See how wide he goes here compared to Gugelmin. You'd expect the V12 Ferrari to really eat that car alive down the back straight, and it doesn't. But it is very quick here in these corners, which would indicate that he's carrying a lot of wing, which is helping him through the corners and also helps his tire wear a lot. But he's obviously not doing much for his straight line speed.
I said Capelli, that is Gugelmin and Prost. This is the battle for second. Sandro Nannini lurking behind Andrea De Cesaris in the background.
Sandro Nannini only 2.3 seconds behind Alan Prost. He's actually pulled up to them. It could be, of course, that Prost is being slightly held up here by Gugelmin.
Once again, onto the Mistral, the back straightaway, with the wind in their faces at about 10 miles an hour, heating up to about 85 degrees here at Le Castellet, France. Under the bridge at more than 200 miles an hour, nose to tail, nobody lifting through this quick right-hander.
This long right-hander here, as I've already said, these cars have been measured at about 4.9 lateral Gs. Very, very tough on the car and, of course, the driver, especially the upper torso and the neck. 80 laps is a lot of laps around here.
We talked to Nigel Mansell the other night, and he showed us how he can't close the collar on his shirt during the racing season because his neck muscles bulge. Let's get down to the pits for an update from John.
I understand. We are in the March pits, and as you can see, the tire blankets are still on down here. This is the first sign of a team wanting to make a pit stop. Everyone is very relaxed. They're sitting on the tires. They have their gloves off. They aren't even wearing the tire gloves. They are in heavy anticipation of possibly being able to go the entire distance without a stop, without a pit stop. Remember that the V8 cars are lighter. They carry less fuel, less wing. They're pushing through the air with less resistance. They hope to go the whole way without a tire stop. They started out on Goodyear Cs, and they're just hoping that they will hang on.
And they are at halfway. We are 40 laps in to this 80-lap race. Mauricio Gugelmin trying to hold off Alain Prost. Ivan Capelli is your leader. What a day for Leighton House. We'll be back to the French Grand Prix in a moment. Barsha, David Hobbs, and John Bizignano with you at the 40th Grand Prix of France. Hey, nice seats, huh? I guarantee it's hot up there. Your leader is Ivan Capelli, followed by Mauricio Gugelmin. John tells us that the Leighton House cars may try to go without a stop in this race. They are just past halfway. Alain Prost follows in the Ferrari, followed by Sandro Nannini and Nigel Mansell. You're on board with Eric Bernard. His teammate Aguri Suzuki, the Japanese driver, is behind. And this is Suzuki's look ahead at his teammate. He's going to take him down the inside.
And he does so. Very nice into turn one there. You see that little left-right flick. This is the important corner, the right-hander onto the straight. And we're now in with Suzuki, the Japanese driver. He also drives a Toyota in the World Sports Endurance Championship.
Had a massive crash at the 24 Hours of Le Mans this year, but he's okay.
Now it'll be interesting to see if he can make any headway on the car in front of him, which I think is John Alicia.
A couple of guys going door to door, so to speak.
Somebody slowing up there. Oh, Suzuki getting a bit out of shape as he goes in the chicane.
That's one of the Brabhams up ahead. This team, LaRousse, is opening a new factory here at the Paul Ricard circuit. I'm sure they thought that was going to be great. They could do all their testing at the site of the French Grand Prix. That was until the French circuit at Magny-Cours signed a 5-year contract to hold the French Grand Prix much closer to the city of Paris than we are here at Paul Ricard. If they pass their safety inspection in 2 weeks, Magny Cours will hold its first French Grand Prix in 1991. Passing once again, going underneath. That looks like David Brabham's Brabham. This is Aguri Suzuki's Lola. Good nose-to-tail battle there.
That looked like Martin Donnelly just coming through that turn there. Coming up to get the... that's one of it's not the car he's racing for the position. There's Ivan Capelli back in the lead. Capelli still, in fact, his lead is growing over Gugelmin and Prost. He's now got an 8 1/4 second lead, and he is consistently lapping almost spot on the nail at 1 minute 9.1 seconds. Which is just about a tenth or two quicker than anybody else out here is lapping this afternoon. So, on tyres that have now done 44 laps to everybody else's tyres that did about 25 laps, Capelli is still turning in the fastest laps of the race.
Leighton House team manager Ian Phillips is recovering from viral meningitis. He's been off his feet for about 3 months. If he is watching anywhere within the sound of our voice, hurry back, Ian. Your boys are making you proud today. Gugelmin trying to fight off Prost. This is the battle for second. Behind, Sandro Nannini is in 4th place. He's coming up strong.
Hot, tiring work out there today. Very dehydrating with such a low humidity, high temperature, and extremely hard work. Now, there are places on this circuit where, of course, you can relax a little bit down these long straights. But once you come to the end, especially the south end of the circuit, there's a lot of work to do over about a 45-second period there. Onto the backstretch.
Temperature in the mid-80s, humidity 30%, light breeze blowing in the drivers' faces on this back straightaway.
Mansell and Senna, in fact, who are lying in 5th and 6th, are slipping out of the clutches of this battling trio here. They're losing ground. Nigel Mansell's losing ground slowly but surely to these three, Gugelmin, Prost, and Nannini there, fetching up the back of this group. Mansell is gradually losing ground to them.
5.5 seconds behind Nannini is Nigel Mansell, followed by Ayrton Senna, running in the 6th spot, 3.5 seconds behind Mansell. Let's get down to John Bizignano in the pit.
Japanese driver Satoru Nakajima bringing the second Tyrrell in. A little bit of problem with the left rear. This is a very late pit stop for the Pirellis. He almost killed it going out of the pits. Of course, this is the man who will be bringing the V10 Hondas to this very, very impressive Tyrrell team in the 1991 season.
Gugelmin followed by Prost through the turn section. Here is Capelli. You can see the interval. Here comes the 2nd and 3rd place cars and the 4th place car of Sandro Nannini.
Capelli now has stretched that lead to over 9 seconds. And in fact turned a lap then of 1 minute 8.7 seconds. So he is consistently going faster than his pursuers.
And if he keeps that up, he may be able to build up a big enough lead that he can get in, get a good pit stop, and get out again. But he's going to have to get at least 25 seconds on the field, I would think, to do that.
Absolutely. A really good pit stop is about 6 to 8 seconds. And, of course, that does not take into account the time going in and out. It's a very slow entry to the pits here.
That assumes you can find your pit in the absolute miasma of personnel walking up and down the pit lane in your typical Formula One race. Closing up as they come at you down the front straightaway here at Le Castellet.
That car in the back of the picture is Nakajima, who of course has been lapped in the Tyrrell.
It is Capelli, Gugelmin, Prost, Nannini, Mansell, and Senna in your top 6. We'll update the rest as we get them straight. And while we do that, we'll take a quick time out. You're watching live the 40th French Grand Prix. Stay with us. Plenty of action still to come from France. Of the rich and famous, places like Saint-Tropez, Cap d'Antibes, Cannes, and Monte Carlo. ESPN Speed World coverage of the Formula One Grand Prix of France is brought to you by Motorcraft. Get the peace of mind of doing it right with the right parts. Motorcraft quality parts. And by Wagner. Power painting that's not just a whole lot. As Satoru Nakajima takes his Tyrrell down the Mistral straightaway at Le Castellet in the circuit Paul Ricard. Your leader is Ivan Capelli over Maurizio Gugelmin, followed by Alain Prost, Sandro Nannini, Nigel Mansell, Ayrton Senna, Nelson Piquet, Gerhard Berger, Riccardo Patrese, and Aguri Suzuki. Eric Bernard follows along with Derek Warwick, Martin Donnelly, and Philippe Ayot, the last cars, 14 of them on the lead lap. Satoru Nakajima, Michele Alboreto, Andrea De Cesaris, Stefano Modena, Nicola Larini, and Yannick Dalmas, each one lap down.
The race we'd like to see really is Mansell, Senna and Piquet here, but we're obviously not going to see it. I can't quite understand why Senna and Berger undoubtedly, I wouldn't say had the legs, but certainly had the capability of leading this race. And after those two rather poor pit stops, which must have undermined them in some way, because neither of them are making any impression on these front runners at all. Senna remains constantly about 2 seconds behind Nigel Mansell, who is now 7 seconds behind Nannini, and Gerhard Berger is losing ground slowly but surely to Nelson Piquet. So Senna and Berger lying in 6th and 8th spot and not looking as if they're going to improve that dramatically.
Alain Prost. I'm tempted to say he's zeroing in on Maurizio Gugelmin, but he's had that opportunity for the last 15 laps, and he cannot seem to make a dent in that V8-powered car with his V12 Ferrari. The Ferraris used extra powerful V12 engines to qualify 1st and 4th in this race, but they did not use the same engines in the race. They say the ones they've got are better than what they had at Mexico 2 weeks ago, but they are not racing those extra powerful qualifying engines just yet. Only the 6th Frenchman to race for Ferrari, Alain Prost, following Maurice Trintignant, Jean Berra, Didier Pironi, Patrick Tambay, René Arnoux. 10 races have been won for the great prancing horse by French drivers. Make that 11 races. The 10th was the Brazilian win for Prost, who then followed up with a Mexican win 2 weeks ago.
Down that long back straight, as you say, 200 miles an hour. Really, really drafting. Oh!
What a place to look for a pass.
Nearly had him. Drafted right off him. This is where he does that very long, wide sweep. He's undoubtedly extremely quick through this section, but of course, it's hard to capitalize on it and actually make the pass right here.
Well, as we all know after watching Arie Luyendyk's performance in the Indy 500, positioning is everything. And Alain Prost, in contrast to what he had to do 2 weeks ago in Mexico when he simply had to make a blind rush through the field, now is poised to perhaps win this race again. Derek Warwick comes in the Lotus. Quick wipe to the visor. Something in your eye, Derek, boy? Another of the really fine gentlemen in Formula One. Derek Warwick, always with a smile or a joke. Nice guy.
And, of course, now a Honda dealer.
No commercial messages. It is still Gugelmin, Prost, and Nannini running 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. Let's go aboard the in-car camera of Eric Bernard, presently shown back in 11th place, running just behind his teammate Aguri Suzuki. Listen to the sound of this V12 engine. Okay, now compare that, if you will, with the V10 Renault in the car of Riccardo Patrese. Now listen to see if he lifts at this sweeping right-hander. Just a little bit.
Just a bit. The gear ratios on these cars, you can tell from the gear shift pattern how unbelievably close these gears are, especially third and fourth, down to third to this chicane.
With 54 laps complete, up front, Ivan Capelli's lead is now being chewed down. And in fact, Alain Prost has gotten by Mauricio Gugelmin. So the Leighton House strategy may be coming apart. Suddenly, Prost has opened up 6 car lengths. And it is Capelli by only 5.3 seconds over Prost. There goes Capelli fleeing in the distance. Here is the pass. We don't want you to miss anything. Prost got him at the end of the front straightaway, it would appear, under hard braking. And Nannini was right there to go, too. But Nannini didn't get it done. It is Capelli, Prost, Gugelmin, Nannini, Mansell. Senna still stuck in 5th, although he seems to be closing in a little bit on Mansell. He's now 1.6 seconds behind. Remember, the top 6 position pay points, and that is what this man, Alain Prost, needs right now. He is tied for 2nd in the standings with Gerhard Berger, 8 points behind leader Ayrton Senna. 9 points for 1st, 6 for 2nd, 4 for 3rd, 3 for 4th, 2 for 5th, 1 for 6th. Take your best 11 races of the season, and you too could be world champion. Capelli remains your leader. Prost has knocked another second off that lead. He is just 4 ticks behind. We'll be back in a moment. The most important vital signs in any race car. John Bizignano has more on how Formula One teams monitor temperatures in their cars.
When a Formula One car comes off a Grand Prix circuit, it is a very hot item, and the team management wants to know exactly how warm certain components are running. They do this by securing heat strips to those components at which they want to monitor the temperature. This discolors at the maximum heat, and therefore they can be recorded as soon as the car comes in from the pits. Then the engineers with the mechanics decide on how best to keep these components within their maximum running range. It can be too cold or too hot. One of the reasons that Grand Prix cars do not finish races is because of too much heat, things actually breaking down because of too much or too little temperature. And that problem can be solved by applying something as small and simple as these heat stickers.
To live action at the 40th Grand Prix of France with 57 laps complete of 80 scheduled. Your leader is Ivan Capelli by 4.4 seconds over the Ferrari of Alain Prost, the big crowd favorite here at Le Castellet. Maurizio Gugelmin in the Leighton House runs 3rd, followed by Sandro Nannini in 4th, Nigel Mansell in the Ferrari in 5th, and Ayrton Senna in the final points-paying position 6th.
Senna is catching up with Nigel Mansell. He's now only 8/10 of a second behind, and Mansell himself is also catching up with Nannini. So hopefully Mansell, and there is Capelli.
Capelli, your leader, and behind him
by a bunch of back markers, wasn't he, going down to turn 1. So of course we're not going to see what happens.
Big opportunity for Alain Prost to close in. Our pictures being provided by the television network TF1 here in France. Oh, and Gugelmin is done. Steam from the back of the Leighton House. Oh, what a disappointment for this young man from Brazil. Right on the front straightaway in front of all the fans, who ran so well for so long, but it's not the tires that let him down, it's the engine.
Well and truly blown up by the look of things. There we see Capelli, and there, right behind him, is not Capelli. That is Gerhard Berger.
Ayrton Senna.
Ayrton
Senna running in the 5th position now with Gugelmin out of the race. 58 laps down, 22 to go. Senna had a horrible pit stop. Both he and his McLaren teammate Gerhard Berger, big difficulties getting the left rear wheel back on. There you see Gugelmin's car about to be pushed off. That's right at the very entrance to the pit lane. Very interesting pit layout here at the Circuit Paul Ricard. There are 2 overlapping pit entrances, much like a highway cloverleaf. You could never do that with a Formula One car. There is Gugelmin, bravely standing up to an interview. How would you feel at this hour, folks? After trying so hard under such conditions. only to have it all go up in a puff of steam. Actually, Gugelmin's pretty good about interviews, and a couple of other guys might have attacked that guy.
We somehow missed that, but Senna, of course, has in fact got around Nigel Mansell. That was Nigel Mansell behind him. Senna's coming up to lap one of the Ligier cars, which he's just successfully done. Is that? I can't see the number.
Either Ayo or Larini.
So Senna is now in 4th spot, and he's just over 4 seconds behind Nannini.
Coming on strong, his fast lap thus far, the one he just turned, 108.573. Not the quick lap of the race thus far, but as that car gets lighter, having burned off fuel with 21 laps remaining.
And there's Capelli now being covered extremely closely by Alan Prost. Can he get round this car going to turn 1? Yes, they both managed to do that, but that puts Prost right on Capelli's tail as they go onto this long back straight.
Now Capelli has been told by his team that Maurizio Gugelmin, his teammate, blew up. So Capelli is no doubt glancing down at his dashboard. Here comes Ayrton Senna.
So that is the gap. Back to Senna in 4th spot from the lead, and 60 laps have gone, 20 laps to go.
There is Nigel Mansell, who's been in and out of the pits for his 2nd tire change. So the Ferraris have stopped twice, at least half of them have.
Now then,
20 laps to go.
Interesting to see if Prost will. Somehow, I don't think he will. But there you see a good picture of how much rubber these guys are leaving on the track. You can see it lying around. In fact, you can see it being kicked up. Little balls of rubber keep getting flicked up in the air. Up there you see the almost like a gravel pit.
The dark shading, it's called the marbles.
Somebody else in the pits. Was that in fact Prost?
It was a red car. It might have been Prost. No, it isn't. Capelli to the right of your screen, Prost to the left. The battle for first place in France.
The lead has opened out a bit since that last time round. Capelli's pulled out some time over Prost on that lap.
Nannini in 4th is 5.5 seconds behind Prost. Senna 4.8 seconds behind Nannini in 4th. Nelson Piquet 16 seconds behind Senna in 5th, followed by Gerhard Berger 1.5 seconds back. So Senna has pretty clear mirrors, and he's concentrating on Nannini. 10 cars remain on the lead lap. The last one is Eric Bernard's Lola. Let's go down to the pits now, where John is standing by with Maurizio Gugelmin.
Maurizio Gugelmin, your best drive for a very long time, but what took you out of this French Grand Prix?
We just managed to balance the car really well, and we're running very soft tires, and that helped, and we didn't have to change. But the problem is the oil light came on about 10 laps before blow up, and basically I was just waiting to go and just went in front of the pits, unfortunately.
Let me ask you, do you think that your teammate has enough tire, a good enough tire wear to stay out there, or will he have to come in? Will he have to surrender his lead?
No way, he'll do the whole distance. We both plan to balance the car really well. We're on the softest tire, and our car is working really well. I just hope his engine lasts.
Maurizio, best of luck in 1 week's time in Silverstone, and I'm very sorry about your result here.
Thank you.
Well, there you see Ivan Capelli, and you heard it from his teammate. Capelli will try to go the distance without a tire change. And that would be his first victory. Shades of Gerhard Berger with the Benetton team at Mexico a few years back. When he clamped on Pirelli tires, never stopped, and stole the victory. There's the man of the hour as far as French television is concerned, Alain Prost.
Well, it still seems pretty amazing that Prost and Berger and Senna, for that matter, haven't made more effect or more ground up on Capelli, who is running tires that have done twice as much mileage as theirs. It's quite astounding. I mean, Gugelmin says they had a good setup. Boy, he's not kidding. They must have had an amazing setup.
What an incredible rise for this team from the ashes of Mexico 2 weeks ago, and they did not qualify to a possible victory here in France with 17 laps remaining. We'll take a quick time out. You won't miss anything. We'll be back to Le Castellet in just a moment.
Yeah, we're
when I started years ago with motocross, my father painted for me the helmet, and it's a big A in the front, no, same Alex, and is the color is because famous motor rider in Italy, Giacomo Agostini, was the red and the gold colors.
Giacomo Agostini, one of the great motorcycle road racers of all time. The inspiration for the helmet design for Alex Caffey with the Footwork Arrows team.
There you see Nannini going out the picture on the left, and right behind him now is Ayrton Senna, 3.1 seconds behind. That looks like Nelson Piquet to me, who in fact is behind, and there with him is Gerhard Berger. They are duking it out for 5th and 6th spot.
And in 7th, you saw Ricardo Patrese Williams and Nigel Mansell just behind. So we've got a line of cars running for position here. Kelly Alboreto is lapped and leading the way. But the battle is right behind him.
And all these guys are basically scrapping over those last couple of points. 2 for 5th and 1 for 6th. Obviously, every point counts in this World Championship, and this year, more than ever, every point is going to count, because no one looks like going to have a runaway year.
14 laps to go. That is Capelli on the left in the Leighton House Judge. On the right, Alain Prost in the Ferrari. Onto the backstretch they go another time.
Now, can Alain Prost use that undoubtedly superior power that he has with the 312 Ferrari to use here on the back straight? It looks unlikely. Is he going to? No.
And the fresher tires. Prost has stopped once. Nigel Mansell in the other Ferrari has already stopped a second time. Mansell presently runs in 8th position at the back of that battle between Nannini, Senna, Piquet, Berger, and Patrese. Prost bidding for a 3rd straight victory in his home Grand Prix, extending his own record, if he can do it, to 42. V8 Jug with your normal manual shift transmission versus the V12 Ferrari with that unique computer-controlled semi-automatic 7-speed gearbox in the red Ferrari.
And that 7 speeds does give you a significant advantage on accelerating onto these long straights, because it just breaks up the gear ratio pattern, just closes them up, keeps the engine closer to its peak performance the whole time. But he's not making any significant ground on Capelli here. I find it absolutely fascinating. The chassis configurations, the aerodynamics that these guys have worked on all weekend, the combination is just incredible. And obviously Capelli and his crew and Gugelmin really did hit the jackpot. But obviously Prost is never down and out until it's over.
It has been a great battle all day long. We've seen nose-to-tail racing all over this 2.36-mile racetrack. And what an extraordinary story Yvon Capelli is.
Well, he's certainly gone from chump to champ in the last 2 weeks. I mean, they have had an absolutely foul year, failing to qualify on 2 or 3 occasions, including just 2 weeks ago in Mexico. Qualified well here, and look at them now, leading the race. I mean, if he was to drop out now, I mean, it would be just like a fairy tale, really. Hopefully, he won't drop out. Nannini now 7 seconds behind that battling duo. In fact, that's him just coming to the picture there. And right behind Nannini now is Senna.
Ooh, Capelli ripping through that corner around the Dallara. I believe that's Andrea De Cesaris again. Prost makes short work of him as well. Now keep in mind that this Leighton House team will be taking possession of an entirely new engine next year, built by Ilmor Engineering in England. The same company that developed Chevrolet's Indianapolis car engine into an absolute dominating force in kart racing. We'll be seeing those cars after this race at 2 p.m. this afternoon from the Cleveland Grand Prix at Burke Lakefront Airport. But the Ilmor Engineering firm will put a totally new Formula One engine into these Leighton House cars next year.
And it's going to be at least a V10 and maybe a V12.
Now we're picking up the battle further back. No, we're going to stay with Capelli. We got a glimpse there of Berger and Patrese running nose to tail. There is like maybe he's broken a exhaust header or something.
It could well have done. And of course, this is the one place you don't want to be down on power.
Now you saw slower traffic going out the left side of your screen. This could be a dicey moment. Here comes the leaders. Oh, my. Prost just nipped in underneath that Brabham.
That, in fact, is Eric Bernard in front of them. In the Lola. Went well in practice and qualifying. Went incredibly well the first day. In fact, he's actually slowed up as the weekends progressed.
Now he slides over to let the leaders come through. Capelli with Prost right there. 70 laps down, 10 remain. Oh, and Berger lit up the tires there. That Berger under pressure from Mansell.
Mansell, I think, yes. Good Lord, we're going to get a replay of Mexico.
And all over again. Mansell and Berger battling for that 6th and final points-paying spot. Now you're on board with Aguri Suzuki. Running in the 9th spot. Here come the leaders by. Suzuki being put a lap down. 8 cars, that is, remain on the lead lap now.
I did think that these two cars, the Lola Lamborghinis, might have done just a bit better in the race than they have. They seem to have lost a lot of their grip somehow during the race.
This is a very high-speed circuit, and we have another coming up next Sunday in the British Grand Prix. We'll be watching live. We hope you'll join us. Alain Prost.
Unlikely to be this hot, I might add.
Prost now losing ground to Capelli. With just less than 10, make that 9 laps to go now. Prost losing big time to Capelli. So suddenly, Yvonne Capelli has a new lease on life. Prost dropping back by more than a second, 2.7 seconds at the start-finish line. This race could be taking a dramatic turn. We'll take a quick timeout and return for the closing laps of the 40th French Grand Prix, live here on ESPN. Back live at Le Castellet, France, looking out the back of Eric Bernard's Lola Lamborghini. Don't forget, coming your way next week at 8:50 a.m. live Eastern Time, the Grand Prix of Britain. Last year, Alain Prost completed the back-to-back France-Britain sweep. We'll see if he can do it again. Right now, he's attempting to run down Yvonne Capelli. Will be coming your way at 10 minutes to 9 Eastern Time next Sunday morning, July 15th, from Silverstone, England. 7 laps remain.
Smoke coming out the back of Nigel Mansell's car.
Wow. Tough break for Nigel Mansell. Gravel flies everywhere, hand in the air, signaling he's slowing down. Looks like the engine has expired on the Ferrari.
Mansell disappointing end to the day. He made 2 pit stops. Here we see again Gerhard Berger around that long, fast corner at the end of the back straight, and there you see the Ferrari of Nigel Mansell losing a lot of oil, whether the engine is erupted or just an oil pipe or even the gearbox, we don't know. And that looks like Patrese doing the same thing, unless it was just his tires.
I think that was tire smoke.
Yeah, well,
Mansell was running in 7th position when he dropped out. That moves Patrese up to 7th with lap traffic behind him. We have 7 laps, make that 6 laps to go as they flash across the start-finish line at 140 miles an hour. Alain Prost holds fast lap at 1 minute 8.212 seconds. It is Capelli over Prost. Sandro Nannini runs 3rd. Ayrton Senna in the McLaren is 4th.
Coming up to a lap car here at a very bad spot. Entering the trickiest, most twisty part of the circuit into the double right. Oh, and he gives way and lets both the lead cars through. It's one of the Brabhams. I can't tell which one.
Once more, Alain Prost closes in.
Well, he'll slip back every now and then. We've seen him slip back. That's the sort of thing he's liable to do to induce confidence. There we see Nigel Mansell's forlorn figure walking away from his expired Ferrari. The sort of thing Alain Prost is liable to do is drop back to give Capelli a false sense of confidence.
believe that's Modernus Brabham. I believe he's the only Brabham still out there on the racetrack. The 35-year-old Alain Prost in the #1 car, emblematic of the world champion, closing in on the 27-year-old Italian Ivan Capelli. 5 laps remaining.
Race here run at absolutely record speed for this event. Capelli and Prost down that long back straight with a 5-second advantage over Nannini, who's lying third, who in turn is another 5 seconds in front of Senna, who seems to be able to fail to make any significant move.
Oh, Prost looked at the outside there. Now he shifts to the inside. Alain Prost knows with 4 laps remaining, when they hit the stripe this time, he must make the move soon. But Capelli certainly seems to be up to the task. Let's take another look at it.
That long, wide sweep to the outside. Capelli goes wide. Prost nearly gets up the inside, but is denied the pass.
That is the thrust and parry of Formula One. Tires look good on both cars, even though Capelli has run start to finish on a single set of Goodyears. Prost has stopped once.
And you must remember, you know, that Capelli has had a very, very bad year. And to lead and win a race takes a certain amount of practice and know-how. And he is definitely out of practice at leading races, whereas Alain Prost, of course, has led more than anybody else in history. And so for Capelli to hold Prost off under extreme pressure like this is no mean feat.
There's Ayrton Senna running in 3rd position, but he is 10 seconds down to the battle. Nigel probably running to avoid all those well-wishers who would swamp him at the lowest moment in a driver's career.
So Sandro Nannini, we've lost Sandro Nannini somewhere. So Senna is now in 3rd spot. 10 seconds behind Prost, but no Nannini. How terribly, terribly disappointed for Nannini, who had such a great run. He's out there somewhere.
Let's keep our eyes open, see if we see him as the leaders pass. If in fact he is stopped out there, Nannini shows up nowhere on the electronic scoreboard. Ayrton Senna inherits 3rd, but as I said, he is 10 seconds behind the battle for the lead. 3 laps remaining. The cars before and behind him are lapped. Ayrton Senna pretty much runs alone right now. Well, at one point, the McLaren was the car you absolutely had to have to win a Formula One race. We said that Ferrari had come on even terms, but now, from absolutely out of nowhere, it's the Leighton House. Here's Prost, bid for the lead, and he makes it. And the crowd goes berserk here at Le Castellet. The hometown favorite, Alain Prost, with 3 laps remaining, 2 laps this time around, has taken over the lead, and as he did at Mexico, he has come to the front as cagily as you could possibly do it.
Well, the newer tires and the extra wing all played into his hands there. He got more downforce going into that corner, which allowed him to get round the inside of Ivan Capelli, whose tires must be getting a bit ragged by now.
I thought I saw a puff of tire smoke off of Capelli's left rear as the pass was completed. He had to turn out a little bit to let Prost by. There's a look at how the folks around here think of Alain Prost, but it hasn't always been that way. Early in his career, he drove for the Renault factory Formula One team, had a falling out with that team, left under a cloud, took a tremendous beating from the French press, and things have never really been the same between them. But with McLaren and now with Ferrari, he has gone on to be the all-time winningest driver in Formula One. Should he win today, it will be his 42nd.
1.5 laps to go.
Senna runs in the 3rd position, pretty much untouched, which would mean 9 points for Prost, 6 for Capelli, 4 for Senna, and a net gain of 5 in the championship for the 2nd place Prost over the 1st place Ayrton Senna.
This is going to be a close championship this year, folks. Do not go away at any cost.
Remember that last year Alain Prost won back-to-back at France and England. We'll be coming to you live at 10 minutes to 9 a.m. Eastern Time from mighty Silverstone Racetrack in England next Sunday with the British Grand Prix. And that will be a very special occasion. Every British Grand Prix is. We're on the last lap.
Of course, other major sporting events taking place around the world today is the Siebkens Upper Boddington Open, which is being played on the sports field at Upper Boddington, England. This, of course, is a famous annual affair, almost as famous as Alan Prost winning the French Grand Prix.
What are they playing?
Cricket, of course.
Oh, of course.
For the Siebkens Oar.
What a sticky wicket. The sound of the crowd almost drowns out the sound of that 12-cylinder Ferrari streamer as Alain Prost completes his final lap of the Circuit Paul Ricard in Le Castellet. Perhaps the final Grand Prix here for years and years to come as it moves to Magny-Cours next year. And with a wave of the checkered flag, Alain Prost picks up his third successive French Grand Prix, pulls immediately to the side of the road, and look at the response from his countrymen. Ivan Capelli, you got to cross that line. Here comes Senna. Oh, out of fuel, perhaps? Must have been. Capelli over Senna by the nearest of margins, and I'll bet that's one happy young Italian as well. Second place is as good as a victory.
Prost won that race by 10 seconds, which is just about the difference in the pit stops. His was 7 and Senna's was 17. And I'm afraid that it's got so competitive now, there is no way you can give up 10 seconds in the pits.
The last time Ferrari won back-to-back at the hands of Gerhard Berger, Japan and Australia back in 1987. And now, in his first season with Ferrari, Alain Prost has brought them back-to-back victories.
So we have 3 victories each now, 3 for Ayrton Senna and 3 for Alain Prost.
1 for Riccardo Patrese at Imola. And Prost and Senna and Patrese will all be there in a week's time at Silverstone for the Grand Prix of Great Britain. We hope you'll join us live. Allez, Alain, the great French national hero, and there is the podium that awaits him. We'll return to France. Back at a jubilantly happy Paul Ricard circuit at Le Castellet, and look at the fans storm the pit lane. Their man, Alain Prost, has come through with his record-extending 42nd career Grand Prix victory. After an incredible display of nose-to-tail racing, Prost cagily stalked Ivan Capelli, who tried to go the entire distance without a tire stop and came within 2 laps of pulling it off. It must be a very happy Ferrari garage indeed. Let's learn more now with John Bizignano in the pit lane.
We're with Steve Nichols from Utah, USA, and also the chief designer for Ferrari. Steve, I don't know when I've seen you so happy.
Well, maybe a couple of weeks ago in Mexico, but other than that...
We are experiencing technical difficulties with the sound portion of this program.
Here at ESPN, we get lots of letters asking us how to go about starting racing driving. Well, back in the prehistoric days when I started, of course, my heroes were people like Ned Jarrett and Benny Parsons. And so I went into saloon car racing and took Mother's Morris Oxford off to the races and hopefully drove it home again. But don't worry about how I started. Today we asked a lot of these drivers how they got their start in racing.
So I saw the first time in Formula 1 in Monza when I was 14 years old. And I said with my father, it could be nice to have a go-kart and to try to make to have some fun, to try to drive. And we started in February, and we never stopped. We always improve our situation, and we arrived in Formula 1.
I was 6 years old, and I started with the go-karts. And I drove go-karts 8 years, and after that I drove 2 years motocross. And then I started Formula Fords in 1985, and now in 1990 I'm in Formula 1.
I had a passion for this sport, and I started with rally, and then I started with Formula Abarth, and then as a Formula 1. But I like this.
Well, I did karting for about 10 years, since I was 10 years old till the age of 20. And after that, because I won the World Championship in karting 74, and I didn't want to stay anymore in that category, I decided to go for just fun and an experience to motor racing. I think it was not really a step that I tried to do to be a professional as a start. Then things that came quite good, and very quickly, in 2 years, I found myself in Formula 1, and I went on.
I started by the go-kart at 11 years old, and I start after by the Winfield School when I'm 18 years old, and I win the French Championship in the Formula 1 Turbo, and I continued in Formula 3 and 3000, and now in Formula 1.
As you heard, most of those drivers got to Formula 1 through go-karts and Formula 3 and other lesser formula. But Eric Bernard came here to the Winfield Driving School right at Paul Ricard. They've had a great record in Formula 1 racing, and other notable pupils are Jean Alesi and, of course, Alan Prost. However, in the United States, don't give up. There are lots of very good racing driver schools all over the North American continent. The way to find these schools is through racing magazines or through some of the clubs like Sports Car Club of America or IMSA. But don't forget, if you really want to get to the top in racing, either into Indy cars or Formula 1, you're going to have access to about $1 million.
$1 million a season. Don't forget to send us your questions for the drivers. On the podium, your winner, Alain Prost. A very tired Ayrton Senna, who probably doesn't want to spend a whole lot of time with Alain Prost on a podium, particularly when he's not on the top. Wanders off. And Ivan Capelli probably never wants to leave that second place position.
He wants to stay there as long as possible. There's Fiorio.
Cesare Fiorio of Ferrari.
With Ferrari.
Let's take a look at the final results of today's 40th running of the Grand Prix of France. Alain Prost, your winner, over Ivan Capelli of Italy and Ayrton Senna of Brazil. Nelson Piquet finishes 4th, followed by Gerhard Berger and Riccardo Patrese. In 7th, Aguri Suzuki with a fine performance for the LaRousse team, followed by his teammate Eric Bernard, Philippe Alliot, Kelly Alboreto filling out the top 10. Derek Warwick in the Arrows, it's a force of habit. In the Lotus comes home 11th, followed by his teammate Martin Donnelly. They not only qualify together, they race together. In 13th position, Stefano Modena of Italy, followed by Nicola Larini, Andrea De Cesaris, David Brabham coming home 16th. I thought I noticed that he was out of the race, but he comes home a fine 15th, 3 lap down, make that 16th. Again, we'll recap the scoring here at the Grand Prix of France. Eric Bernard, Philippe Alliot, Michele Alboreto, Warwick, Martin Donnelly, whom you just heard from, all 1 lap down. Followed by Stefano Modena, 2 laps down, as is Nicola Larini and Andrea De Cesaris. David Brabham, 3 laps in arrears, followed by Sandro Nannini, 5 laps down, as was Yannick Dalmas. Nigel Mansell, after blowing the engine in his Ferrari with just a few laps remaining, finishes 19th, 8 laps down to the leaders. Taking a look at the points as they stand as we prepare for the British Grand Prix next Sunday. Ayrton Senna still the leader with 35 points, but now his 8-point gap has been reduced to 3 over his former teammate and arch rival Alain Prost, the winner here today. Gerhard Berger has 25 for 3rd place, followed by Nelson Piquet with 16 in 4th. Jean Alesi with 15 in 5th. He is tied with Nigel Mansell at 15. Kerry Boutsen has 11, and Riccardo Patrese 10. In the Constructors' World Championship, McLaren Honda with 60 points leads Ferrari in 2nd place with 45, Benetton with 23, Williams with 21, and the Tyrrell team with 14 points. All in all, David, we expected a race to go down in record pace, and we certainly got it.
Well, we certainly did. It is quite astonishing that today's race took exactly 5 minutes to the second less than the same amount of laps last year. Last year's race was 1 hour 38 minutes and 29 seconds. Today's race 1 hour 33 minutes and 29 seconds. The fastest lap of the race was over 4 seconds quicker than last year's fastest lap. Obviously some of that is going down to the resurfacing, but a lot of it is the incredible technological changes that these cars go through. Terribly disappointing for Nigel Mansell there. We saw him get out of his car near the end, and also we still don't know what happened to Alessandro Nannini, who's running so strongly all day and had a very disappointing finish right down in 17th spot. We don't quite know what happened to him. And of course, disappointing for poor old Thierry Boutsen, yet again, who was let down by his Renault engine. Not necessarily let again by his engine, but just unfortunate for Thierry.
As was Mauricio Gugelmin, who ran so well in second place for so long. Your top 6 cars, Riccardo Patrese being the final point scorer, finish on the lead lap. We'll be back to Le Castellet in a moment. Audio difficulties along the way, just read our lips. It's simple. It has certainly been an eventful day here at the circuit Paul Ricard, and who better to sum it up for us than a man who was here for the very first race on this circuit some 20 years ago, our own John Bizignano.
Thanks for reminding all my fans exactly how old I am, Bob, but I appreciate that. Also, David, Alessandro Nannini in the Benetton went out with an electrical problem with only 5 laps to go. Very disappointing to him, but we are standing on hallowed ground within the Ferrari compound, and once again, that man, Alain Prost, white, red, and blue helmet of Alain Prost, brought home another Ferrari victory in 1990. We are headed towards Silverstone, the fastest circuit in Formula One, and Ferrari with the V12 is ready to blow Honda's doors off. Don't miss it. Next Sunday here on ESPN. What a race it's going to be in British Grand Prix, Silverstone, England.
And in fact, that's a racetrack also about to undergo a facelift that will make it a very different facility in 1991. But right now, it is just blindingly quick. And once again, David, I think we can anticipate another McLaren versus Ferrari showdown.
Well, McLaren have made great issue over the last 2 years that the package has got to be right. It's not just the engine, it's everything. The handling, the aerodynamics, and of course the driving. And of course, one of those parts of the package that's going to have to be got right is the pit stops. You could basically say that Berger and Senna lost valuable points today through bad pit stops for whatever the reason. But Alain Prost again demonstrated just what an incredible race winner he is. He is absolutely the consummate race winner of all time. 42 wins to his credit now. Next in the list is Jackie Stewart at 27. And the way things are going at the moment, when they get their new engine, they're going to be a very, very tough team to beat as the year progresses. Nigel Mansell had an extremely disappointing day, but I don't think anybody could complain about the quality of racing that we saw today. Not an awful lot of lead changes, but I mean the whole field covered by such a short elapsed time, the whole period of the race. Very, very exciting, intensely technical, and I thought extremely interesting race. And we're looking for some very, very many good races to come, starting with Silverstone just next week.
Well, we mentioned earlier that Magny-Cours, about an hour's drive from Paris, France, will host the Grand Prix of France in the coming years, provided the safety inspectors say that the circuit and its improvements are ready to go. And that would be a sad moment, leaving Paul Ricard Circuit at Le Castellet, where the French Grand Prix has been coming for near on 2 decades now. Magny-Cours would become the 7th home of this great race that has seen so many great drivers and so many world champions over the years. Nevertheless, time marches on, and we will go on to mighty Silverstone in England, a circuit built on a World War II air base, long straightaways, very wide, very fast, and it should be very exciting. And of course, let's not forget the V8 cars and the tremendous show put on today by the Benetton Ford team and by the Leighton House Judd team. They were absolutely spectacular. Hats off to Ivan Capelli and his fallen teammate Mauricio Gugelmin. Alain Prost, your winner over Ivan Capelli, Ayrton Senna, Nelson Piquet, Gerhard Berger, and Riccardo Patrese. Don't forget, next week we'll be coming to you July 15th, Sunday at 8:50 a.m. Eastern Time, live. It should be enormous.